video start? So this shrinks down?
It should be showing what's on your screen here. So, hold on, it just takes, sometimes it takes 30 seconds to, there it goes, you're live. And then mute that, mute that little mic, mute that showing that. And when you're done of your meeting, stop and complete. And
Rochelle, I'll be right back.
And then hit the exit button when you're done with the meeting. Okay. Those are the two buttons I was referring to.
Those two right there.
Stop, complete, and then wait 30
Stop,
seconds.
complete, wait. Okay, so this shrinks down.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to start.
Oh no, you already started it. You're in the meeting.
Okay.
So then you just want to click that to get rid of this part, and or unless you want to do roll call by clicking that. But you're
okay,
live.
All right. I think I missed a step here.
Confirm it's looking good on my phone.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm Mayor Parvin. How are you? Linda?
Hi, good morning.
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 Hey, huh?
Yes, next month we'll see everybody in person.
Would be the hope.
Oh, David, you grew something since I saw you last.
Hi, are you on?
I'm here.
Mr. Lama? Oh, okay, perfect. So I show it's 9 o'clock. Do we know if supervisors are, sorry, it's just a habit, isn't it? Supervisor Ramirez, is she planning on attending?
As far as we know, she's planning on attending.
Okay. We do have a quorum. So, oh, there she is. Perfect. Good morning, Supervisor Ramirez.
Good morning, Commissioner and Chair Rooney. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling better, thank you. I'm in a boot starting today with my little walking cane here too. So hopefully I'll just keep continuing to get better. So thank you. I appreciate that lots. Okay, Mr. Loma, are we ready to get started?
I think we are.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Ventura Local Agency Formation Commission for September 15th. And in response to the declared state and local emergencies due to the novel coronavirus, and in accordance with the California's governor's order to limit indoor operations as a precautionary measure to help slow the spread of the novel coronavirus, members of the public may electronically attend the Ventura LAFCO meeting by observing it streaming live at https://www.ventura.lafco.ca.gov/agendas-minutes/. Okay. If any member of the public would like to submit comments during the meeting, please submit those to kai.luma@ventura.org. And please indicate the agenda item number in the email subject line. A comment submitted during the meeting may not exceed 250 words, period. Every effort will be made to read the comment into the record if received before the conclusion of the agenda item. A comment received during the meeting, but after the agenda item has been heard, will be made part of the record. Okay. So on to call the meeting to order. Could we have the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you very much. Roll call, please, Ms. Beltran.
Commissioner Bill De La Pena,
Present.
Commissioner Freeman. Commissioner Freeman,
He's there.
Commissioner Parks,
Here.
Commissioner Parvin,
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez,
I'm here.
Commissioner Richards,
Present.
Chair Rooney,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Ross, alternate Commissioner Ross, you're muted.
Present.
Thank you. Alternate Commissioner Zaragoza.
Here.
Great, thank you. Agenda review, would any commissioners like to remove any items for consideration or change anything to the agenda? Okay, we'll consider it approved. Do we need to vote on that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is the time for public comment, for the opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on any subject matter within the commission's jurisdiction. Do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
Do not. Okay, thank you. We move on to the consent calendar. There are 2 items for consideration. There are the minutes of the Ventura LAFCO meeting for May 19th, 2021, and also the budget to actual reports for May, June, July, and August. Can we approve the consent calendar? Would anybody like to remove anything?
I'll move to approve.
Approval. Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Got motion
Second.
by Commissioner Ramirez, second by Freeman. Can we vote on both of them together?
Commissioner Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes. Okay, moving on to public hearings, item number 9, LAFCO 21-09, the Ojai Valley Sanitation District annexation, Burnham Creek, Cayuma, Ojai, parcels A through F. Mr. Lama, would you like to make a presentation?
Ms. Osdi will be making this presentation.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, Chair Rooney and Commissioners. This is item 9, LAFCO 2109, Ojai Valley Sanitary District Annexation, Burnham Creek, Koyama, Ojai, parcels A through F. The proposal area consists of 6 separate developed residential parcels shown on this map in red as parcels A through F, which are located throughout the Ojai Valley and Ventura River Valley. The Ojai Valley Sanitary District jurisdictional area is shaded in turquoise, with the heavy turquoise line delineating the district's sphere of influence. The city of Ojai is shown in yellow and black dashed line for reference. In each case, the connection to sewer is to address a failing septic system, and there's no new development. All 6 parcels are located within the district's sphere of influence. And other than the connection to the sewer system, no other changes in public services would occur as a result of annexation to the district. Parcel A is located on Burnham Road near the unincorporated community of Oakview. Parcel B is also located on Burnham Road. And Parcel C is also on Burnham Road. Parcel D is located on Creek Road, south of Ojai. And Parcel E is located on Koyama Road near the Arbolada area immediately north of the city of Ojai. And finally, Parcel F is located on East Ojai Avenue, just east of the city of Ojai city limits. A public hearing is required for this proposal because 12 registered voters reside within the proposal area, and it is therefore considered by LAFCO law to be inhabited. However, the commission may waive protest proceedings if the provisions of Government Code Section 56663 are met, including that opposition of landowners or registered voters within the proposal area is not received before the conclusion of commission proceedings. Staff recommends that the commission determine that the action to approve the request is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and that it adopt the resolution making determinations and approving the proposed annexation. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Andrea, is there an extension of a sewer line that is going to be, say, Burnham Road and the other roads? Is that a trunk line or a lateral?
There were mainline extensions, I believe, and I think that should be discussed in the staff report. I can find the reference for you. Looks like a sewer mainline extension was necessary for all of them. If you look at page 8 of the staff report, page 23 of the packet, the second to last paragraph has a list of the distances for the mainline extensions.
Does the mainline extension qualify as an exemption under CEQA?
Yes, in this case it does.
Okay, what classification are you identifying as being exempt?
15319, parcels, annexation of developed residential parcels, and parcels exempted from CEQA under section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good question. Did we receive any comments from any of the landowners?
No, we did not.
Okay, and they were notified.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
It mentions on page 8 of the staff report that the OVSD has collected or financed all fees related to the connection of the sewer system. So are some of these property owners going to be financed and some are paying for it ahead of time? Is that how it works?
I think there's a cost. So Ojai Valley Sanitary District has fees that are due to them in order to be eligible for connection to the sewer system, and then they have ongoing sewer service fees.
Okay. So it just depends on the property owner, right?
Yes, and by financing, I don't know that that means over time or just that the fees are covered by the property owners.
Okay.
And the Ojai Valley
Thank you.
Sanitary District staff, I believe, is available if there are specific questions for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Is there a recommendation on this item or a motion?
I would recommend, I'll make a motion to follow the recommendations A and B to approve the annexations.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 10, LAFCO 20-09S, Bell Canyon Community Services District Sphere of Influence Review and/or Update. Before we go into the agenda item specifically, I know we received some communication on that. So if staff could please alert us to the communication that was received.
There was a request to continue this item to the next LAFCO meeting, which would be in October, and that letter requesting the continuance is attachment 5 to the staff report.
There was a secondary communication that we received as well from one of the individuals involved.
The
I would,
Yeah, the district's attorney sent a letter yesterday, again reiterating a request for a continuance. That was provided to the commission late yesterday afternoon.
There was a letter from Mr. Wolf, I think this morning, that I was looking at.
Oh,
Do you have that?
yes, we have that as well. That was not related to the item before the commission. It was related to attachments to the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have about those.
Well, but I mean, if it's part of the staff report, then it's included in there. So that's why I'm just want to make sure that we put his letter into the record as well.
Yes, it is part of the record.
Okay, thank you. And before we move forward, there were some comments that I want to refer to our attorney, Mr. Boetta. The claims that were included in those letters, not only from the attorney firm, but also from Mr. Wolf. What exposure does the LAFCO Commission have based upon those comments in those letters?
I'm sorry, the audio wasn't perfect there. The question was the question, what exposure does the commission have?
Yes, I mean, there are comments made in there that if the commission took action today, that there may be legal consequences of that. So that's what I'm asking, based upon those communications, what exposure does the LAFCO Commission have if we proceeded with this item today?
Well, the short answer is none. I have reviewed the claims made by the attorney representing the CSD, and based on that review, I see no impediment to the commission taking action today. I can address any specific claims or assertions made if you would like.
I guess specifically, thank you on the attorney letter that you received. My comments, I think, surround the comments that are made by Mr. Wolf regarding sharing of confidential information. And then I'll come back to Commissioner Parks and Ramirez.
Well, I did not see any confidential information. The communication I saw, or the concern that I understood, was that he had concerns about the statements that were being made, but I'm not aware of anything that would be deemed confidential. And as far as
In one of the attachments, it said, this is confidential information. And I just want to make sure that, that's what he's referring to.
These two letters were sent directly to the LAFCO office under a cover of fax with the direction that the author wanted these letters to be provided to the commission. We handled them as we do all letters sent to the commission on an item that's coming before the commission and attached them to the staff report. Any claims of confidentiality that might have existed no longer apply when this was provided to LAFCO. It became a public record as soon as it came into the office. There's no attorney-client privilege here. There's no privileged information. This is part of the public record now.
Okay, so Commissioner Parks?
Yes, I believe the attorney representing the CSD has stated that we incorrectly notified the hearing and didn't mention the MSR, rather just the sphere of influence. Is it required that we specifically mention the MSR and whether we need to have a hearing prior to this hearing because it has the MSR? Those were the two things that I recall mentioned by the CSD attorney.
No, if you refer to page 43 of the packet, page 5 of 6 of the staff report for this item, we explained that there is no requirement to publicly notice a municipal service review. And that's because there's no requirement that a municipal service review be considered, accepted, or adopted at a public hearing. There is no requirement that the district be provided the MSR, the draft MSR, 21 days before the hearing, as was asserted. And there is no requirement that the public notice contain recommended actions, as is asserted. This matter, the only matter before the commission that requires consideration at a public hearing and public notice is any changes to the sphere of influence. And we did notice that action consistent with state law. So all notices have been provided consistent with state law.
Thank you. It just kind of clears the air on the allegations. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you. Just briefly, Mr. Boada, there seemed to be concern when I read it as a non-attorney would. I am an attorney, but I read it and sounded like as if we were being sort of threatened with some legal action for having that in the record. So I would just like to ask you if you could just briefly state are we immune from allegations of defamation, et cetera, because we're elected or appointed?
Any communications made in the conduct of official proceedings before the commission would be privileged under the law, and so there would be no legal exposure either to the commission or to any individual commissioners.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear that. So.
Okay, any other comments before we go into the agenda item? Okay. Do we have any public comments on this agenda item?
We do.
How many do you have, Mr. Loma?
How many speakers do we have?
Yes.
We have 4 speakers on this item, and I received an email this morning that the individual would like to be read into the record for this item.
Why don't we go ahead and make the staff presentation, and then we'll take public comments, and then we'll go into commissioner comments. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning,
Excuse me,
commissioners.
Just a moment,
Yes,
just one moment. Commissioner Parks, do you still have a question? Or just lower your hand there. Okay, thank you.
okay. This is agenda item number 10. It is LAFCO case file 2009S. It's the sphere of influence review and/or update for the Bell Canyon Community Services District. Now, before I begin, there's a lot of information in this presentation because there's a lot of information in the municipal service review that the commission will be considering today. If you have any questions during my presentation, please feel free to interrupt me and I'll try to answer those questions. So, sphere of influence review and update, what is it? Well, pursuant to LAFCO law, the commission was required to determine and adopt a sphere of influence for each city and special district on or before January 1st of 2008. Now, of course, a sphere of influence is defined by LAFCO law as the probable physical boundary and service area for a local agency as determined by the commission. Now, LAFCO law also provides that every 5 years thereafter, the commission must, as necessary, review and update each sphere of influence. And prior to or in conjunction with a sphere of influence update, LAFCO is required to conduct a municipal service review, or MSR. And that's what staff chose to do here to give the commission all of the options available to it to take any action that it finds necessary on this sphere of influence as part of this review. The Bell Canyon Community Services District is located on the extreme southeast corner of the county. It's east of Thousand Oaks and south of Simi Valley. It's surrounded by open space in Ventura County, but it abuts the city of Los Angeles and is accessible through the city of Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. Here is the red is the outline of the sphere of influence, and the district boundaries are in yellow. Here is the official boundary map as adopted by the commission in 2015. Here again, the boundaries of the district are in yellow and the sphere of influence is in red. Now, the Bell Canyon CSD, it's approximately 1,677 acres, and the boundaries of the CSD generally aligns with the boundaries of the Bell Canyon community, which is a residential community, kind of a large lot residential community consisting of 672 single-family residences. But there's a total of 795 parcels, so there is some opportunity for further development out there. Now, the community is gated. The community's gates restrict public access, so it is a private gated community. Now, the staff report contains 4 recommendations. I'm going to talk about each recommendation individually and just give you the reasoning why we are recommending as we are. So the first recommendation, A, it's in the staff report, is to adopt a resolution, LAFCO 2009SA, accepting the municipal service review, including statements of determination for the Bell Canyon Community Services District, and determining it to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So the MSR that was provided to you under separate cover and as attachment 1 to this staff report contains 6 sections. I'm not going to talk about each of these sections. There's a background section, a profile of the district, growth and population projections, a review of the municipal services that are being provided, the relationship between the CSD and the community's homeowners association, or HOA, and then written determinations. What I want to focus on in this presentation is, you can do the next slide, is the background of the district. This is a discussion of the history of the CSD and how its current authorized services were determined. Then a review of the municipal services. This really is the meat of the MSR. It's a discussion of the municipal services that the CSD provides. And that's divided into 2 sections: the authorized services that they provide, and then the unauthorized services that they are providing. And then I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the CSD and the homeowners association. So first, I want to talk about the background. Again, this is a section of the draft MSR. So the CSD was formed by LAFCO back in 1984. And as part of that formation, this area was detached from the Rancho Simi Rec and Park District. And the property tax that was going from this area that was going to the Rec and Park District was diverted to fund the new CSD. At that time, 1984, that predated current LAFCO law, it predated current CSD law. There were no limitations on the types of services that the district could provide. At that time, the district didn't say they were going to provide any specific services. That was going to be dependent on funding and just the will of the community, and to be established at a later time. So LAFCO law changed in 2000 and thereafter, and it required that LAFCO review each special district and to establish what services were being provided by that district. And once LAFCO did that, all other services that weren't being provided, whether they were authorized or not at the time, all other services were deemed to be latent services. The district no longer had the authority to provide those services. So in 2005, LAFCO prepared a municipal service review to establish what the CSD's authorized powers and services were at that time. And the result was that LAFCO determined the following 4 services were authorized: solid waste collection and disposal, including recycling and green waste removal, advanced life support, emergency medical, and paramedic. And these services were under the provisions of a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. Enhanced traffic patrol, again, are here under the provisions of a contract with the California Highway Patrol. And then community recreation programs. In 2007, the CSD requested LAFCO approval to expand its authorized powers, and that there's a process for this outlined in LAFCO law, to authorize it to exercise 2 additional services or functions or powers. And these are in red here: security services, including but not limited to burglar and fire alarm services to protect lives and property, and graffiti abatement. In 2010, LAFCO reviewed the sphere of influence for the district as scheduled every 5 years, as I mentioned. The commission makes no changes. In 2015, LAFCO reviewed the sphere of influence again and made no changes to the sphere. And then 2020, the sphere of influence was scheduled to be reviewed and or updated pursuant to the LAFCO adopted work plan. So we are here because we were scheduled to do this review beginning in 2020. And as I mentioned, a draft MSR was prepared as part of as part of this review. So I'm going to move on to the section in the draft municipal service review regarding the review of municipal services. And I wanted to stress here that this is just a summary of what's in the draft MSR, just a brief summary of these issues. Now, as I mentioned, in 2007, the commission reaffirmed what the existing or what authorized services are of the district: rubbish recycling and green waste removal, enhanced traffic patrol under the provisions of a contract with the CHP, emergency medical, advanced life support services under the provisions of a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. It may organize, promote, conduct, and advertise community recreation programs, provide security services, including but not limited to burglar and fire alarm services to protect lives and property, and graffiti abatement. This is the extent of the CSD's authorized services. They are not authorized to provide any other services or functions. That could be found in the CSD Principal Act. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of these. So regarding rubbish recycling and green waste removal, the CSD provides this service through a contract with a private service provider, and this is allowed for under the CSD law. And the contract is funded by property tax revenue. That is the primary revenue source for the district, is property tax. And the service is a standard residential trash collection services. That basically means 1 bin each for trash, recycling, and green waste. Regarding enhanced traffic patrol under the provisions of a contract with the California Highway Patrol, there has been no contract with the CHP since 2013. Therefore, the CSD is not providing this service. They are not exercising this function. Regarding emergency medical advanced life support services under the provisions of a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, there is no contract between the CSD and the LA Fire Department. Therefore, the CSD is not exercising this function or providing this service. That's not to say the service isn't being provided to the CSD. It is being provided under a contract with the Ventura County Fire Protection District and the Los Angeles Fire Department, not with the CSD. Organize, promote, conduct, and advertise community recreation programs. So the community's HOA actually organizes, promotes, conducts, and advertises community recreation programs. The HOA then passes these costs on to the CSD, which essentially gives these funds to the HOA as grants to cover these expenses. Now, since 2018, the CSD has budgeted $270,000 for these recreation programs and has expended over $100,000 on these programs, essentially giving that money to the HOA for these services. Now, CSD law and recreation and park district law. Let me explain this a little bit. So the CSD law is the law that the district operates under. And regarding community recreation programs, it provides that the CSD may provide these programs, but they must do it in a manner that is consistent with the recreation and park district law. Basically, they have to do it in a manner of a full-fledged recreation and park district. So they fall under Recreation Park District law as well as CSD law when it comes to recreation programs. So both CSD law and Recreation and Park District law provide that recreation services may be provided by a CSD either directly, which they're not doing here, or via a contract, and that contract must be with a public agency. Those are the only two options for the CSD to provide this service, either directly or under a contract with another public agency that provides these services. As explained in the MSR, there are no contracts or agreements between the CSD and the HOA for this service, and the HOA is not a public agency. Therefore, the CSD has no legal authority to receive recreation programs from or provide them through the HOA. And therefore, the conclusion is that the CSD does not provide community recreation programs. In addition to that, the arrangement with the HOA to provide these services violates the CSD law as far as Recreation and Park District law, and appears to be an improper use of public funds. Security services, including but not limited to burglar and fire alarm services to protect lives and property, again, as explained in the municipal services review. The CSD has adopted no policies, procedures, or ordinances regarding security services, and they staff no security personnel. They have budgeted and expended no funds on security services for at least the last 5 years. And the general manager has confirmed to staff that the CSD does not provide this service. Therefore, the conclusion of the MSR is the CSD is not providing security services. And the same applies for graffiti abatement. The CSD has adopted no policies, procedures, or ordinances regarding graffiti abatement and staffs no graffiti abatement personnel. They have budgeted and expended no funds for graffiti abatement, again, at least in the last 5 years. Here again, the general manager confirmed that the CSD does not provide this service. Therefore, the conclusion is the CSD is not providing graffiti abatement services. So of the 6 authorized powers, the CSD is providing one service, that's rubbish recycling and green waste removal. And as explained in the MSR and summarized here, they are not providing the remaining 5 authorized services. So those are the authorized services. Now I want to move on to services and functions that the commission is exercising that they are not authorized to provide. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the law. So a latent service or power is defined in LAFCO law as those services, facilities, functions, or powers authorized by the Principal Act under which the district is formed, but that are not being exercised as determined by the local agency formation commission. So here again, the CSD Principal Act lists a number of authorized services, but they are all latent unless LAFCO approves the exercise of those. Now, LAFCO law continues, second bullet point. The exercise of a new or different functions or classes of services by a special district, that's another term for latent services or powers, is considered a change of organization, the approval of which resides exclusively within the jurisdiction of LAFCO. And on top of that, CSD law provides that if a CSD board of directors desires to exercise a latent power, the district shall first receive the approval of the local agency formation commission pursuant to LAFCO law. So the only way that a district can exercise a latent power is by receiving approval, by first receiving approval from LAFCO. So as mentioned in the MSR, the district has been and continues to provide services and exercise powers that they have no authority to exercise. These include traffic enforcement, emergency medical training, parks and recreational facilities, community emergency response team, fire and emergency related services, and the operation of a school bus stop. As I mentioned, these are latent powers. The CSD has no legal authority to exercise these powers or expend funds on them, yet they have and continue to do so. Traffic enforcement. So since 2015, the CSD has expended over $62,000 on traffic enforcement services. Now remember, their authorized service is traffic enforcement, but only under the provisions of a contract with the CHP. This includes the granting of $50,000 to the HOA for traffic enforcement equipment at the community's front gate. It also includes the purchase of what's been characterized as a decoy traffic enforcement car to give the false impression that the CSD was authorized to provide traffic enforcement and patrol. Here's a picture of the CSD's decoy traffic car. So the car is a 2008 surplus police vehicle that at the time was outfitted to resemble a law enforcement vehicle, again, to give the false impression that they had the authority to patrol and enforce traffic restrictions. The car was repainted at the request of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. So apparently there was a complaint filed. The county sheriff confirmed with LAFCO that the district does not have the ability to provide traffic enforcement or patrol services. So at the request of the sheriff's office, the car was then repainted. So this car is now labeled as a state of California vehicle and bears the state seal. And it should be noted that the CSD is not a state agency, and it has no authority to represent itself as a state agency or use the state seal to give that impression or this label for as a state of California vehicle for that matter. However, for the last year or two, the district has essentially loaned this vehicle to the Homeowners Association for traffic enforcement. So now you have the HOA, which is a private entity, driving around a public resource bearing the false impression that they have the authority of the state of California. Emergency medical training. In 2015 and 2016, the CSD expended $4,000 on CPR training for community members. They do not have this authority. And the expense of spending public funds on a power that they do not have is an improper use of public funds. Parks and recreation facilities. The district does not have the authority to over parks and recreation facilities. They do not have the authority to acquire, maintain, improve any type of recreation facilities, including parks and open space. And the CSD owns no recreation facilities. The community park and the hiking trails are owned by the Homeowners Association. Nevertheless, since 2015, the CSD has budgeted over $900,000 for the maintenance of and improvements to these HOA-owned facilities, and has given the HOA over $100,000 in what they call grants to the HOA for the maintenance of these facilities. Now, in 2020, the CSD leased the community park from the HOA and budgeted several $100,000 for park improvements. And the CSD has also been discussing the purchase of a property adjacent to the park for recreational purposes. However, as I mentioned, the CSD does not have the authority to do anything with recreational facilities. They did not have the authority to give to the HOA these grants. On top of that, the HOA cannot provide services to the CSD consistent with recreation and park district law. They do not have the authority to enter into a lease for a community park or the trails with the HOA. And they do not have the authority to purchase property for recreational purposes. They just don't have this authority. It's a latent power that would need to be approved by LAFCO. Again, here, the exercise of a non-authorized service violates the CSD Principal Act, LAFCO law, and is an improper use of public funds. Community Emergency Response Team. In 2015, the CSD actually applied to LAFCO to exercise this function, and they were told that they couldn't because under the law, in order for them to do so, they would have to first start a fully operational fire department, part of which would be CERT services. They declined to do that, so the application was withdrawn. So as early as 2015 or 2016, they were aware that they were not authorized to provide CERT services. However, over the next 4 years, the CSD went ahead and budgeted $51,000 for CERT services and expended over $6,000 over these fiscal years. And as explained in more detail in the MSR, the funds budgeted and expended for CERT are not reflected in the annual audits for these years, and it is unclear what happened to these funds. Regarding fire and emergency-related services, again, they have no authority to conduct any services or exercise any powers related to fire and emergency-related services. Here again, nevertheless, they purchased a vehicle equipped with emergency tools and equipment to be used for emergency purposes. The board authorized the pursuit of $325,000 in CAL FIRE grants in 2019. We're informed that they were never pursued. And then in 2020, the CSD sponsored the Fire Safe Council. And actually, they accepted a grant from the state for $37,000 for this council. And they have possession of that money, and they administer it on behalf of the Fire Safe Council, giving money to the Fire Safe Council as needed. They have expended about $8,000. They have no authority to participate in any of these activities. And regarding a school bus stop, the district owns, manages, operates, and maintains property for the purposes of a school bus stop. Here again, it does not have the authority to do so. I want to move on now to a little bit of a discussion about the relationship between the CSD and the HOA. As I explained, there is a lot of coordination between the HOA and the CSD, and they have a relationship. It's sometimes difficult to tell one from the other, and it is an inappropriate relationship and likely violates state law. So I want to start with the legal authority for the CSD to grant funds to the HOA. So as I explained earlier, the CSD grants funds to the HOA to provide recreation programs, maintain and improve recreation facilities, and traffic enforcement, such as the $50,000 for traffic enforcement equipment and the use of the CSD vehicle. So the CSD was asked, we actually asked them, can you provide legal justification for these grants? And they were unable to cite any legal authority to provide grants to the HOA. On top of that, the CSD has adopted no programs or policies regarding the provision of such grants, and there appears to be no oversight of these grants once they're given to the HOA. Once they're given to the HOA, it's a private entity, and it's no longer subject to public scrutiny. So the expenditure of public funds is proper only insofar as they are authorized, either explicitly or implicitly, by legislative enactment. As explained, the CSD has no legal authority to provide recreational programs through the HOA. The CSD has no legal authority to provide traffic enforcement outside of a contract with the CHP, and they have no authority to provide recreational facilities. So therefore, the CSD has no legal authority to provide these grants to the homeowners association. Public records and meetings. As I mentioned, the HOA is not a public agency, and the use of the CSD public funds granted to the HOA is not subject to public disclosure laws. On top of that, CSD board meetings occur behind the community's front gates, the sole purpose of which is to keep the public out. So the public is prevented from attending these CSD board meetings or from accessing the posted agendas, which are required to be accessible to the public 72 hours in advance of the meetings. So it appears that the CSD repeatedly violates the Brown Act every time it meets. Conflicts of interest. Two of the CSD board members are also board members of the Homeowners Association. In 2013, the district attorney investigated the relationship between the CSD and the HOA, and one of the things they looked into was the dual board membership. And the DA concluded that the appearance of impropriety created by their dual directorship should be eliminated. Now, they didn't find any specific conflicts of interest at the time, but they did give an example of how future conflicts of interest could occur by this dual board membership. So they recommended that it be eliminated. However, no action was taken by the CSD in this regard. I just want to touch just briefly on the written determinations. When the commission accepts an MSR, it must make written findings regarding these determinations. And I only put these up here just for informational. The actual determinations, which are based on the content of the MSR, are part of the MSR, and they're also attached to the resolution that we are recommending that the commission adopt. Okay, before I move on to recommendation B, are there any questions regarding recommendation A? Okay.
Any comments from any commissioner?
Could you go back to recommendation A again?
Would you like me to read it, or it's on the screen now?
No, you don't have to read it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Loma?
You can go forward to B. Okay, I'll move on to
Okay.
recommendation B. Oh,
Thank you. No, go ahead.
okay. Okay, so recommendation B is that, given what I just presented as part of the MSR, the numerous violations of LAFCO law, CSD law, resource and recreation and park district law, the improper expenditure of hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants to the HOA of public money and on powers and services that the district is not authorized to provide, given the issues with compliance with the Brown Act, the questionable financial reporting and the managerial deficiencies of the district, all as discussed in the MSR. Staff's second recommendation is that the commission adopt a resolution, LAFCO 2009SB, which is adopting a provisional sphere of influence for the Bell Canyon Community Services District, establishing that the only service being provided is by the CSD is rubbish recycling and green waste removal, and determining it to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. So what is a provisional sphere of influence, and what's the expectation of adopting a sphere of influence? Well, the Commissioner's Handbook, Section 422, provides for the adoption of a provisional sphere. And a provisional sphere of influence is intended to delineate territory within which the subject service provider should pursue restructuring or reorganization options as recommended in the most recent service review prepared by LAFCO. So in doing this, LAFCO essentially is encouraging the agency to discuss alternatives to how they are providing services now and in the future, or look at reorganization options for those services and return to LAFCO with the results of their discussions. If pursuant to this process, when they come back and the commission determines that there should be a change of organization or reorganization, LAFCO can at that time determine if it wants to consider the initiation of such proceedings or ask that an affected agency pursue initiation of such proceedings. So next slide. So this is what it looks like. It's the same sphere of influence. However, it would be just designated as provisional. And again, this is signaling to the district that it really needs to address these issues identified in the MSR. Now, what's the effect of a provisional sphere of influence? Well, in this case, Government Code 56425I provides that when adopting, amending, or updating a sphere of influence for a special district, the commission shall establish the nature, location, and extent of any functions or classes of services provided by existing districts. Now, we go back to the definition of a latent service or power. And it says that those services, facilities, functions, or powers authorized by the Principal Act under which the district is formed, but that are not being exercised as determined by LAFCO pursuant to subdivision I of section 56425 above. So when the commission adopts this sphere of influence, and as part of that, it establishes what services are being provided, by operation of law, all other services become latent services or powers. Now here, pursuant to the MSR, it was determined that the CSD is providing only rubbish recycling and green waste removal. Therefore, the adoption of the provisional sphere of influence will render all other services as latent by operation of law. So this essentially means that the only authorized service that the district will be able to provide and exercise is rubbish recycling and green waste removal. Now, this does not, the district will still have the opportunity to return to LAFCO and request the activation of any of these latent powers. Now, in order to do that, they will have to come back to LAFCO and provide a detailed plan for services, explaining how the service is going to be provided, how it's going to be funded, and the extent of those services. So this doesn't mean that they can ever exercise these again. They just have to go through the process to reestablish them with LAFCO. So this is recommendation C and D. So after the commission, as recommended by staff, accepts the MSR and adopts the sphere of influence as provisional, we are recommending that the commission continue further consideration of the matter for 6 months. And this will allow time for the CSD to resolve the issues identified in the MSR. And here again, the expectation will be that the district will coordinate with LAFCO staff so that we can bring this back in 6 months for further consideration. And in the meantime, in that 6 months, pursuant to recommendation D, we recommend that the commission direct staff to identify the commission's options regarding alternatives to existing service provision or the reorganization of the CSD to be presented to the commission at the end of the 6-month continuation period. So we would also, at the end of that 6 months, provide the commission with alternatives. Next one. And here are the recommendations altogether, all 4 recommendations. I won't read these again, but that concludes my presentation. And I know we have speakers on this subject, and I have one email to be read into the record.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Loma. And just for the record, all 4 of the recommendations are listed on the agenda as posted from LAFCO. I do have a quick question before I turn it over. It seems like in looking at your report, in the MSRs from 2010 and 2015, there were no changes. Does that mean that they were operating according to law and according to, all of the approval for services? Were they offering all of those services during that time? And then we just found it in 2020 when you were looking at the MSR?
Well, they weren't MSRs conducted in 2010 and 2015. They were just sphere reviews. And that really is just where staff checks in with the district. We ask questions about, are there any issues? Do you foresee expanding your service area? Do you foresee wanting to expand the services you're providing? And based on the feedback, we'll at that time make a decision that, well, no, this is a pretty straightforward, there's no issues. We'll just review the sphere and leave it as it is. We did this twice in 2010 and 2015. In 2015, we actually met with the entire board of directors, and we reiterated what their current authorized services were, and asked if they had any plans to go beyond these authorized services. They said no. So we determined that it was just appropriate to do a sphere review and move on. Now, this MSR.
And so then in 2020.
Right, yeah, at
that's
that
the MSR.
point, exactly. Had we been, if any of the issues that we identified now, we were made aware of, as part of that sphere review, then we most likely would have done a municipal service review at that time. So this sphere review really does focus on the time from 2015 to about early 2021.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Zaragoza?
Yes, Kai, if I understand this correctly, that are there any legal penalties for those folks, for doing all the unauthorized latent powers that they were not supposed to be doing?
Are there any type of penalties?
Yes, or legal.
There's no LAFCO doesn't have the power to impose penalties. If there is violations of the law, that I'm sure will either be investigated by the grand jury. If they're potentially criminal, I would imagine the district attorney might get involved. But as far as LAFCO, we have the authority over the services that they're providing and how they're providing those services and where they're providing those services.
So I'm sure then also the DA would probably be involved in the Brown Act potential violations and also the conflict of interest between the membership of the board, of the CSD. So I think that those are legal concerns probably that are not LAFCO concerns, or we don't have the powers to. But it seems to me also that you mentioned that making rules and providing and adopting budgets and so forth without public input, which I think is a total conflict of interest too. But so in other words, those are more DA legal type problems. Is that correct?
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you hear me that? So potentially, the Brown Act violations is a conflict of interest between the board members and the residents of the HOA are potential DA legal items, not LAFCO items.
Yes, my understanding is that violations of the Brown Act aren't investigated by the district attorney.
And have they come back and tried to correct that through LAFCO? And I might have missed that when you.
Well, the process as I see it playing out is under the recommendations is that the district will be provided 6 months to address these issues and then report back to LAFCO. If they've adequately addressed the issues to LAFCO's satisfaction, the commission can then remove the provisional sphere of influence designation. If they haven't resolved these issues to LAFCO's satisfaction, then the commission will be provided with alternatives at that point to take further action regarding the district. I guess the staking point, for instance, about, say, the Brown Act violations is every time the board meets to address the issues in the MSR, they'd be violating the Brown Act. So and I don't know how to get around that.
And they're also expending state dollars. Those are public dollars that they're coming from the state of California. It's another issue.
Yeah, these are public funds that, is their revenue.
Thank you, Kai.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Commissioner Bill de la Peña?
Thank
Did
you.
you call?
Just to clarify, this is the first municipal service review for Bell Canyon?
This is the second one. The first one was performed in 2005. And at that time, municipal service reviews were a brand new thing. They have since morphed into what they were kind of expected to be back in 2005. So how they were approached and performed then is much different than how we approach them today.
Okay. And there can't be a joint powers agreement because the HOA is a private agency?
I don't know that. I think you're right. I haven't even considered the JPA.
Okay. And do you feel, the staff feel that in reviewing this, that 6 months is enough time for an update? It sounds rather involved, what you presented, and I'm wondering whether it would require more time than 6 months.
Well, I think that most of these apparent violations can be resolved right away by ceasing funding them, by ceasing exercising them, by not doing them anymore. That resolves all of those issues. If the commission follows staff's recommendation and adopts a provisional sphere and determines that the only service that they're authorized to provide is trash, then that resolves a lot of these issues regarding giving money to the HOA for recreational programs and such. Trash service is the one service from our standpoint, the MSR, that they are providing consistent with all of the laws that apply to it. So the commission's action will again also help rectify these issues. The issues with the Brown Act, I don't know how they're going to rectify those. That's going to be up to the CSD to determine how they're going to address that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Freeman, then Commissioner Ramirez.
I want to just comment. It is an extremely thorough municipal service review. And we have a unique community there that was formed, and they work together to make their community work. And I just think that we need to give them time. LAFCO law is very specific, and this community doesn't fit in the little boxes that most communities do. And maybe in the future, maybe if it were to be formed now, it would be formed differently. But in respect for the people that run the community, I really feel strongly that we should give them a chance to work together to be more compliant and so that their community operates well. It is a very thorough MSR. Probably in all of the years I've been on LAFCO, it's probably the most thorough. And I understand the legal complications, but for a community that's isolated, it's probably a very difficult situation. And I think we should respect that.
Thank you, Commissioner Freeman. Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you. Yes, I hear you, Commissioner Freeman. But law is law, and we need to respect that. But I'm totally agreeing to see if they can fix this with time. But I want to ask Mr. Boada if you know, or Mr. Loma, if you know, do the directors have to file a statement of economic interest, Form 700?
To the best of
I
my
know
knowledge,
HOA people don't, but the CSD people have to.
members of the board of the CSD would be considered public officials under the Political Reform Act and required to file those disclosures.
Okay, enough said. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to Commissioner Parvin and then Commissioner Richards and then public comments. You're muted, Mayor Parvin.
There's so many buttons you have to deal with. I'd rather be live. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Freeman as far as allowing more time. Obviously, they are now fully aware of all of the challenges before them. If they do happen to have a meeting, I would suggest they have it offsite somewhere while we allow them to have the additional time. I'm not sure 6 months is enough, although I think Kai said that he felt it was. This looks like a very complicated, I mean, they're even going to have an election probably to move people from off the HOA or off the CSD. But my other question is, if they decide to bring back the highway patrol, let's say, for those types of services, and let's say that we go ahead and we adopt the provisional sphere of influence and we only allow them to do their rubbish recycling and green waste removal, what kind of, you said that they would have to create a plan and give it to LAFCO, and LAFCO would have to look at all the costs associated with that to make sure they could fund it. My question is, when they come to LAFCO, what kind of expense is that?
It would be
If
the
they have to
typical,
come back.
right, it would be the typical LAFCO fee. I think it's about $3,000. And you don't need a
Okay.
map, you don't need a legal description. The action is just a request to activate the latent power. And LAFCO law, there's a section of LAFCO law that outlines this process, and they do have to provide a plan for services that just demonstrates that they have the funding, how they're going to provide the service. And then if LAFCO finds it sufficient, LAFCO can authorize it.
Okay, then also, relative to the recommendation, this is before we hear the public, but there's a way to actually recommend both C and D in your recommendation. Would that be true?
Yes, the recommendation is that A, B, C, and D be adopted.
A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
Okay. And then I do want to make a point of, there was that confidential letter, and I just want to say that I thought maybe there's some information in there that could have been redacted, because I mean, it's kind of an accusation letter. And when I read it, I was frankly very surprised to see some of the comments in there that were not excluded. They weren't necessary to give us the information to make a decision today. And I was very disappointed to see actually what was going on page 98. And with that, I'm concluding. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Richards.
Yes, I'd only like to echo Commissioner Freeman's comments. It seems like the Bell Canyon Community Service District is interested in providing these services, and it would be very detrimental, I think, to the community as a whole to not have those services. So I would encourage all parties to get together to look for a resolution on this. It seems like they are interested in trying to work out some resolution, and I'd only encourage that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to Commissioner Parks before public comments.
Mhm. Just a couple of questions. As I recall reading the report, there is considerable amount of funds coming into the CSD. Could you give me a little bit of a summary of that? seemed like maybe it was close to $1 million. How that works?
Yes, the district receives about 600, as far as revenue annually, anywhere a little over 600,000. In 2020, it was anticipating $628,000 in revenue. Now, 610,000 comes from property tax, and then there's some interest and some miscellaneous income. So the overwhelming proportion of revenue comes from property taxes. In the bank, they have about $1.8 million.
So that's more than just money to pick up trash. So what is that money supposed to be allocated for?
I don't know. Yeah, they have, they have not spent it. And I think at one point, they were budgeting hundreds of thousands of dollars to make improvements to the park, something that we've, explained that they don't have the authority to do. So how they spend that money, I don't know.
Okay, and then do the members of does any of the money go to paying for the HOA members, the general manager of the HOA, the CSD members? Does any of the money go to pay for their management, the individuals who sit on the boards?
No, CSD funds cannot be used to fund HOA activities. That's actually what one of the issues that the district attorney investigated in 2013, because CSD money was going to HOA employees. That was
You say they
that was
can,
resolved, huh?
But my question isn't whether it can or cannot, it was just whether it does.
Technically, yes, because the CSD is providing funds to the HOA, including staffing of these recreation programs. So there is CSD money going to the HOA to some degree. It's not like they're paying salaries to the HOA, as far as I can tell, but they are paying the HOA to organize and staff these programs, these recreation programs.
Yeah, I noted that there was a letter saying that one individual is just a volunteer, and I'm wondering if that is the case, or if there is some funding that goes with that. Okay, that concludes my questions at this point. I look forward to hearing from the testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move with public comments.
Would you like me to
Loma?
read? Okay, we've got two emails. The first I'd like to read is, Dear Kai, why would we give this CSD more than 6 months to resolve this when they have stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not accounted for, and they already been told years ago to change their ways, which they have failed to do anything about? And that is, it is not signed. Then I have another one. Again, this is the same individual. Dear Kai, what is the next step in LAFCO's report? Will the report be sent to the district attorney for further investigation? Will LAFCO request a detailed investigation into how the Bell Canyon Association spends the funds? Will LAFCO request all financial records to be produced by the Bell Canyon Association? And then I have another one from Eric Wolf. Eric Wolf is a board member of both the HOA and the CSD. He said, I would like to enter this into the record if pages 94 through 109 be removed from the, quote, agenda packet, unquote. Thank you, Eric Wolf. And if I may touch on those, the letters that were attached to the staff report, those were submitted under public comment for this item. It is not our practice to censor what the content of these letters are. My approach is I do not know what individual commissioners are going to consider to be relevant or not relevant, and I don't think it's my place to make that determination for them. So we provide the letters as they are written. Thank you.
Okay, you want to go to the public speakers now?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
These two letters, the first that Mr. Loma read, are they posted online?
No, I just received them this morning. They're an email.
Okay.
We will make them part of the record, though.
Do we know from whom they are?
I only have the title of the Gmail address. That's it. And it's a gibberish email address, or or title, I should say.
So it's almost anonymous then, or?
Yes, I would characterize it as anonymous.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to public comments, please. The public speakers.
We have Pam Lee, Michael Glassman, Dennis Roy, and Eric Wolf joining us.
Okay, and how much time do we allow for each speaker?
I think 5 is typical.
Okay, up to 5 minutes, and then you will, the microphone will be cut. Thank you.
Ms. Lee?
Hi, can you hear me?
Not very well.
Oh, I don't know what to do.
We cannot hear you.
Please don't start her time yet until she starts speaking, that everybody can hear her.
Does this sound better?
Hi, this is Pam Lee. Can you hear me okay on this microphone?
Yes, better.
Yes.
Thank you. I know that you would allow normally 5 minutes, but because the presentation was long and the fact that we do represent, we are the district and we are the subject of this, I would request that additional time be allotted to address all the issues that we can that were presented during the staff report, if that's possible.
Okay, stop the clock, please. Mr. Loma, could we have a comment on that?
It's up to the commission whether you want to allot additional time for the speaker.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'm okay with that.
Sure.
I think there should be some limitation on it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, we'll grant an additional 3 minutes, so that's 8 minutes total.
Thank you. My name is Pam Lee, and I'm the legal counsel for the Bell Canyon Community Services District. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And we did submit the comment letter yesterday, which you received. And, we want to emphasize that the district is here to work with LAFCO to correct any and all deficiencies that we can, to improve any of the services that we provide to our community, to the residents, and to any visitors. But in looking at the information and the recommendations that LAFCO is proposing to eliminate all but one of the district services in a provisional sphere of influence, we believe that such a dramatic measure requires more information, the ability for the district to correct the significant inaccuracies that are contained in the MSR and to provide further clarification with respect to the MSR, which is the foundation for which you will adopt a provisional sphere of influence. So we believe that foundational aspect has to be corrected and for you to make a decision based on an accurate and complete and a well-founded record. So in order to do so, we're requesting that this hearing be continued at least to allow the district to provide this further information. Our comment letter does contain some of the information, but it is by no means complete in order to correct the inaccuracies that are contained in the record. I'll also note that LAFCO indicated that this was an exempt project, but from CEQA. But the elimination of services would potentially affect the environment, namely the provision of public services from other agencies. And CEQA guidelines does provide that aspect has to be looked at before determining that a project is exempt. And to the extent there may be significant impacts, whether or not there will be, there has to be at least an initial study done. And if at the end of all of this, it's determined there are no significant impacts, a neg deck could be filed. And so with the elimination of all of these services, there will be a demand in the increase for public services from other agencies. If we eliminate traffic patrol, traffic enforcement, emergency services, all of these would have to be determined to be provided by other public agencies rather than the district. Therefore, there has to be an analysis of whether or not that would adversely impact the environment, such that additional measures are going to have to be taken and planned for. So at least we would request that the initial study be done, and this hearing we continue to allow for that. With respect to the MSR itself, there are significant inaccuracies, and we'd first like to point out that the district has indicated that the LAFCO has indicated that the district can provide increased or enhanced traffic patrol, but only under the provisions of a CHP contract. However, Government Code 61070 says that the general power of a district is to provide services itself or contract out with another public agency. That's a general power. It's not a latent power under 61100, with which LAFCO has to approve. So if the district wants to contract out that authority to the CHP or to bid for it with perhaps sheriff from Ventura County, it has the general power to do that without having to go back to LAFCO to get that authority approved. With that general power, we don't believe that just because the contract with CHP expired, that the entire serviceability is also eliminated. Because it was because the contract expired in 2013, the district decided to provide those services itself. We purchased a decoy vehicle, and we're providing traffic patrol through that vehicle. The bottom line is, since that time, there have been 2 fatalities through traffic accidents within the community. The response time is slow, and we want to be able to prevent any further accidents and fatalities and other damages to life and property. To the extent that traffic decoy vehicle allows for that, we have that for the purpose of protecting the lives of the residents as well as the visitors in the communities. You received in attachment 3 of the letter all the pictures of the traffic accidents that occur. Should that be eliminated, we won't have any authority or ability to control, who speeds, who fails to stop at stop signs. It simply will endanger the community. And having to contract that out, we're willing to contract out with CHP again if, the contract terms allow for it. Or we may go with the county sheriffs. That's just something that, we would like to work with LAFCO to figure out. But to have to come back and apply for that latent power after it's been eliminated would take away precious time and the ability for the district to enforce traffic measures that would preserve life and property. And so that's a very significant concern that we have if that power is taken away with this provisional sphere of influence. Similar with the emergency medical services and the medical training, the MSR confirms that the district is authorized to perform emergency medical services under the provisions of a contract with LAFD. And the district's position is that, again, it has the power to do so, not merely through a contract with LAFD, but in its own right as a general power. This includes medical training, such as the CPR classes for the community members, as well as the purchase of the emergency vehicle to use when response times are so low. The fact that we are an isolated community, we're wholly contained within private property and within a district, we don't have any other property that lies outside of the HOA. And the fact that LA County, Fire Department takes over 6 minutes to get here, to be able to respond to that in the interim would save so many lives. In order for us to do so, we need to keep that power. And again, we're willing to work with LAFCO in establishing the policies and the procedures in order for that to happen. Whatever contracts and agreements are necessary, we're willing to do that. But if the power is taken away on a provisional sense, we have no ability to do that until we first come before LAFCO to get that power reinstated. I don't know how long that would take, but that could be months. And in the meantime, with high fire season, with the additional issues that are going on within the community, that time would detrimentally affect not only just the residents, but any visitors that come. and any workers that are here to provide any other services. So that's a heavy concern that the district has. Another large inaccuracy is the fact that there's been hundreds of thousands of dollars to the HOA for grants on recreational programs. That's simply not true. We've provided some of the information in our comment letter that says that we've paid directly the vendors that provide the services for these events. The only thing that we give to the HOA are the costs that are incurred for security and cleanup services that the HOA provides. And that's what we reimburse the HOA for. Everything else we pay on our own directly to the vendors and directly to those that provide the services. And so we believe that that's a very significant point that needs to be corrected in the MSR with respect to the community and recreation programs. Also, with respect to the fact that we're not allowed to own property for recreational facilities, that's simply untrue. The general power of a community service district is to acquire property and occupy it for the benefit of the district. That's a general power under 61060. That's not a latent power that we're required to obtain LAFCO's authority for latent powers to use after the fact.
Excuse me. It has been
If
8
we're
minutes.
allowed to provide programs, but not allowed to provide facilities in order to host those programs, practically speaking, that just doesn't make any sense.
Excuse me, Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Rochelle, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to mention that it has been 8 minutes.
It's been 8 minutes. Okay. Okay. So we're going to have to stop there. Do you have one sentence to wrap this up at this point?
We'd also like to say that, to the extent there's other tangential issues with conflicts of interest and Brown Act violations, we have a plan that we could set out to correct those deficiencies. Conflicts of interest, the HOA board members can recuse themselves, and we can actually establish the minimum or the maximum number of HOA board members that can be board members of the district. So we would have the ability to rectify those potential conflicts of interest.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Okay, your time has expired. I did see a couple of hands up. Commissioner Bill de la Pena, did you have a? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ramirez, did you have a comment? Okay.
I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but just wondered if, and maybe for future information, just wondered why those contracts with CHP and LAFD expired. But I won't just say something you should address later. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next public speaker.
We have Dennis Roy.
Hi, this is Dennis Roy. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners and chairman. Thank you for having us today. Appreciate the opportunity to present. I would ask if you can to bear with me for 8 minutes as well, if you would. Provide me that courtesy, please.
Sir, what is your role?
I'm the president of the CSD at this time.
Okay, and the gentleman behind you, is he anticipated to speak as well?
Yes. Well, he is. Yes, he is. His presentation should be within the 5-minute period.
Okay, so I think at this point, we granted your attorney 8 minutes. I think we should grant you 5 and then the speaker behind you 5.
Okay. I will do the best I can to get through this. I do feel that the staff spent about 5 months preparing the report, and we would like a few minutes to counter it since we weren't given an opportunity to review it or comment it in advance of this hearing. But we will, of course, follow your instruction. I personally, I'm a 40-year real estate attorney in Los Angeles who've worked in the public-private sector. I have a deep respect for the role of government and the need for compliance with law, and a long respect and appreciation for the role of our dedicated public servants. But I'm troubled by what's occurring here and what I've seen happen in the course of this preparation of this report and in the substance of this report. I won't go into all the detail because my time is so short, but the initiation of this report was initiated by a communication to our director, our general manager, suggesting that the communication should be only between the general manager and Mr. Lomo, and that the board should be excluded from that process, which I found a funny way to start an open-minded gathering of information. When that was subsequently came to light with the board, we informed Mr. Lomo that Mr. Glassman, who will speak next, will be our point of contact to coordinate information. and that Mr. Glassman then gave Mr. Luomo reassurance that we wish to proceed in a cooperative and open fashion. And Mr. Glassman will speak to the fact of how that actually unfolded. With respect to the resulting report that came out, I'm not going to comment on all the things. I don't have time, but I will say that there are a number of troubling things, very troubling aspects of the report. The first one, to me, the most glaring, is this simply inaccurate statement that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants to the HOA. That did not occur. There are no hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants to the HOA. The largest expenditure we had was in the recreation area. We provided those services directly. 90% of our expenditures in that area were paid by direct invoices to the third-party providers of those services. We had small payments to the HOA to reimburse them for actual costs of security, actual costs of cleanup, but there was no general payment to the HOA. The idea that there was any unsupervised payment to the HOA, I have no idea where that's coming from. We would love to have the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Luomo if he would approach it in an open-minded fashion and go through all those payments, provide invoices. He can have access to the general ledger. There are no grants to the HOA. With respect to some of the other aspects that we should not be dealing with, Triunfo on trying to assemble the property so we have adequate access to our park, that we should not be dealing with the HOA to create a park lease and improve that park. Partly this is in response to, I'm going to dispense with the rest of my presentation really and just go to the questions that the commissioners raised. But part of that is a desire to find a productive and legally permitted outlet to expend the money that we have saved up in the CSD to improve the parks in our community. And the suggestion that we do not have the authority to enter into real estate transactions with Triunfo or a real estate transaction with the HOA to provide that access to the park and provide the park services, I know that is Mr. Luomo's opinion, but I would point you back to the 2008 course, or May 29, 2009 correspondence we received from Mr. Luomo's predecessor, Ms. Kim Ulick, who informed us that that was a general power of the HOA, of the CSD to enter into real estate transactions without authorization from LAFCO. If I can quote from her email, and we're happy to provide this to you, she's responding to our question about the ability to enter into a lease with the HOA, and she concludes that therefore, having reviewed that this is not a latent power, but a general power of the CSD, therefore adopting an ordinance or entering into a real estate transaction should not be subject to LAFCO review. The other, and that is from Mr. Luomo's predecessor, and that is a correct statement of the law. We also suggested, Mr. Luomo, that to the extent there were uncertainty with respect to these legal considerations and understandings, that we should involve county counsel or appropriate counsel and have them deal with our qualified counsel and get to the bottom of that, but that request was not taken up. Finally, I'm just going to conclude with respect to the bus stop and the acquisition of the Triunfo parcel, and the dealing with the HOA, that when we acquired the bus stop parcel and when we dealt, and that we received encouragement and support from Supervisor Parks when we did that. She found that was a great use of public cooperation in terms of transferring that unused parcel or underutilized parcel to the CSD. We're trying to do the same thing here with Triunfo. And now what was once praised is now condemned. With respect to, I'll just conclude with the questions the commissioners raised. There was a statement that there was no MSR done in 2010 or 2015 because all of these things have sort of occurred since 2015. I think Commissioner Zaragoza asked that. And that feels to me a little disingenuous. We have been handling, it's been a closed community, a gated community for 20 years. We've been having this meeting process is the same. The bus stop parcel has been the same. These are all things that have been in effect for a decade or more. They were not objected to in 2010. They're not objected to in 2015. And now they're viewed as willful violations. We're willing to address this. For instance, on the Brown Act, if anybody would just talk to us, one of the things we could do is, for instance, we could hold all of our meetings by Zoom.
It's been 5 minutes.
We now have new technology.
Chair Rooney.
Allow the public.
Thank you, sir. Can you wrap up? The 5 minutes has expired.
All I would ask is, I think you're on the right track of saying that there are things we can improve, and we are willing and ready to cooperate with that. But it's a mistake, and it's unfair, and it's really destructive to remove all of our powers in the interim and to place us on a probation that does not have a factual predicate. And then
Okay.
what really should happen is we should have 6 months to improve these things to your satisfaction without that cloud over our head and our inability to function in the interim.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Who's the next speaker, Mr. Loma?
We have Michael Glassman and Eric Wolf.
Okay, Mr. Glassman, is this you in your pretty Hawaiian shirt there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes, sir.
I appreciate the time. As you know, my name is Michael Glassman. I am the Vice President of the Bell Canyon Community Services District. I first came on the board this year, so I was not on the board during the time of the period covered by this MSR, and I brought fresh eyes to the process. As a novice, first thing I tried to do when getting involved with the MSR was to look at what your basic rules and guidelines are. And I understood from reading them that it's supposed to be a cooperative process. And I engaged with Mr. Loma and staff in that fashion. I found the staff to be polite and respectful in word, but their process has been far from cooperative indeed. It appeared to me, based upon interaction with staff, that staff brought to the process the view and a predisposition that it was not a matter of whether the district was somehow at fault, but the extent of the fault to be evaluated, and this approach could not be swayed by any factual presentation made by the district. For example, when asked why the district's conduct, as previously applauded in the 2005 MSR, is now being criticized, staff responded, "That was then, and this is now." One of the council members asked about the 2005 MSR and other MSRs in particular. So let me digress for a moment just to reference you back to the 2005 MSR. It talked about, with respect to the Brown Act at page 12, meetings of the district are held the fourth Monday of each month at 7 p.m. in the management office. The public is noticed through postings at the meeting's location, administrative office, and bulletin board, as well as on the community website. Notices are also mailed to all who request it. The district appears meeting acceptable standards for local accountability and governance, and meetings and information are readily accessible to the public. Nothing has changed since now, and now we're being criticized as violating the Brown Act. Further, at page 14 of that report, under local accountability and governance, that the Bell Canyon Community Service District is locally accountable through adherence to applicable government code sections, open and accessible meetings, and dissemination of information and encouragement of participation in its processes. Turning to recreation. While there may be some issue as to whether or not grants have been given to the HOA, and Mr. Roy has spoken to that. Go ahead. And indicated there is no issue. The fact of the matter is that the 2005 MSR speaks to the existence of grants and does not in any way criticize that process. And that you can find both at page 8 and at page 11. Similarly, cooperation with the HOA was viewed positively as a management efficiency. Returning to my more prepared statements. When asked to meet with the district's auditors, when staff was asked to meet with the district auditors to go over concerns and or to meet with me and the general manager prior to the review of the draft MSR, we were advised that this was not a function of staff to provide any guidance. When asked to have a copy of the draft MSR before the meeting with staff to go over the MSR, we were advised, yes, that was consistent with a normal practice, but staff nonetheless declined to accommodate us and to comply with that normal practice. Inexplicably, staff consistently sought to interpret the services authorized to be provided by the district in the narrowest manner possible, without regard to the fact that doing so had the practical effect of depriving the district's constituents of services and activities which would improve their quality of life. Many of those services being previously endorsed by LAFCO. Those of you on the commission who are elected officials should certainly understand the goal of public service is to benefit your constituents. With regard to the probation or provisional sphere of influence, I do not believe that that is the path to follow or the path to travel. I would recommend and request that staff should work with the district over the next 6 months to improve the district's policies and procedures for the delivery of services within the district to the greatest extent allowable. The breadth of such services to be viewed as expansively as the law allows, with the guiding principle of providing maximum benefits to the constituents of the district. To take away a power for us to reapply following this meet and confer extended process with staff is not just the application fee. It's the time of staff. It's the time of attorneys. It's the time of the other districts you have to consult with to get their input on.
It has been 5 minutes.
Thank you for the time and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glassman, before you leave, I have 2 questions for you. They should be pretty short. When you post your agenda 72 hours in advance in accordance with the Brown Act, do you open up your front gates to allow the public who doesn't live in Bell Canyon into the area so they could access the meeting?
No.
Okay. So there is public outside of your gates. So that's, I think, one of the comments.
It's been the case going back to 2005.
So the gates are closed. Nobody from outside the community could get in. Is that correct?
They would have to say they're coming to attend a meeting and they would be allowed in.
Say that again, please.
The gates are closed, but anyone can come to the gate guard. There's a personnel there, identify themselves as coming for a meeting, and the gates would be opened.
Okay. And then the second thing is, you made a comment that you did not receive the MSR in advance. Could you tell me when did you receive the draft MSR that's appeared before us today?
When I was called into the meeting to discuss it with Mr. Loma and Ms.
What's that date, sir?
What you received that she asked.
The date of the meeting, it was about a month ago, but
you weren't allowed to take the report.
So you received the draft MSR about a month ago?
No.
no.
I'm sorry, I'm talking to Mr.
The
Glassman.
document that you now have, we did not get until it was published with you. Prior to its delivery to you, about 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, myself and our general manager were called in to the offices of the LAFCO staff to go over a draft at the time. We had requested to make the meeting more efficient, that we could see the draft so we could have meaningful input before the meeting. We were deprived of that opportunity. So
You received it at the meeting 3 weeks
That's
ago,
correct.
approximately. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Loma, who's the next speaker?
We have Eric Wolf.
Check my documents. They're okay.
Mr. Glassman, could you please mute your microphone? Oh, is this Eric Wolf?
Yes, I'm Eric.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right.
Yes, and I'm sorry. You guys look when you guys look to that. Yes. Yes, just that. Thank you for having me. The reason I want to be on camera is that you will see that there's a human being sitting here. That hit piece that was put in to the item packet did not need to go in there. That was a choice made by someone, presumably staff or Ms. Parks, that decided to put it in. Anyone who would read that would see that this looks like a lover's scorn type of letter. It's outrageous. It's outrageous that you would sit there with coming with ideas and reasons to destroy my life. Do you know what that means? Something like that goes into public record with the allegations, conspiracies. That's outrageous. Okay, so I apologize, and I do want to apologize. I'm a little bit emotional, but you are about to ruin my life. Okay, you guys are all gonna sit there, go get a snack from the kitchen, and I'm gonna go after, and I'm gonna have to go to explain to my wife why this is in public record for my kids to see. This nonsense, and you're gonna publish it. You're gonna take that stuff and put it in public record. And to Kai's thing that he thinks that he's an attorney that knows all the law, that's nonsense. He has absolutely personal liability on doing something like that. So I apologize, but this is not a simple matter. If you read those letters, okay, it is outrageous and it serves no purpose whatsoever in this report. It does nothing for this report. Excuse me, I have to grab my breath for a second, and I did make some notes. I'm trembling here, so I apologize. It's just so outrageous that I'm a volunteer for 10 years, okay? All we're trying to do is do right by the community. There's no nefarious, nothing here, conflicts of interest. Do I have a conflict? I don't have any conflict. Linda Parks was insinuating, oh, but does someone get paid? No one gets paid. I work here 50 hours or 60 hours a week to benefit the community. I do it as a volunteer. Yes, I'm in the HOA. Yes, I'm in the CSD. We abstain whenever there's a conflict. When the government agency did that legal thing, it had nothing to do with us. After the DA came with a report, we changed things, and we said, oh, now we changed things dramatically versus the way they were doing before. And to be clear, I would know if the HOA is getting grants. We do not get grants. Now, there's something like the 50,000 that went to the front gate. You know, there are specific things that went for security, trying to take that issue, you know, and put it in traffic. We have also, but you know what, I'm talking here about myself, okay? And the outrageous, you know, the outrage damage is going to happen to me and my family by leaving this as a public record for no reason. Okay, I'm speaking as an individual, not as a CSD board member. That Tax and me are personally against me. It's very, and make no challenges to the activities as a member of the CSD, and they're just not relevant. I'm asking you once again, please remove them, because what is going to happen is already happening. It's going through all the community, right? I've been a volunteer for 10 years. I'm the assistant chief of the fire department. Linda Parks knows what I've done here during the fires. I'm very supportive of Ventura County. I think I'm one of your promos for the water district. There is no need to destroy me. I did not do anything wrong. Just because Dr. Zeman, and he puts this very nice, Dr. Zeman, very, very impressive, and it's going to look very impressive when I sue his ass, right, for defamation. It's just wrong. So I'm asking this to be removed. You have no reason to keep it in other than, oh, well, we can do that. Not you, but obviously Ty Loma, right? Because I'm hearing other people, you know, on this commission that are saying, are we sure? And he's wrong about the liability. I don't want to get in more lawsuits. I'm not interested in any of this stuff. I just don't want my reputation to be ruined because I'm a volunteer and some guy that lives in Texas sends a letter. Dr. Zeman doesn't live in Bell Canyon. He doesn't own a house in Bell Canyon. He already sold his house. That was his last FU before he left. So now it's up to me to try to untangle what is put in public record. Okay, so please remove it. That's all I'm saying. You have the power to do it. There's no reason to keep it in. Just remove it. And the other thing, please give us another 6 months. There's no reason why not to. It took 6 months for him. We get a few minutes to speak. You know, Dennis Roy, when he speaks, it's like, well, okay, 5 minutes is up. I don't mean any disrespect. I sit on boards myself, okay? But like, it's like Ty Loma gave such a long presentation and made such outrageous accusations. We got the MSR when it was posted, just to be clear if that wasn't clear. That's when we saw it. So was it like a week ago, 2 weeks ago? And we had to do all of this within the week. Organize, get the stuff. And by the way, we sent you, I believe, the spreadsheets. You guys have access to it that actually shows factually that we have.
It's been 5 minutes, Chair Rooney.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Remove that. You could just remove it, make a motion to remove that portion, and also please give us another 6 months.
Thank you,
We're
Mr.
just trying
Wolf.
to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wolf. Do we have any other public comments?
Does Mr. Zine wish to
Okay.
speak?
Oh. Mr. Zine, are you here for public comment?
No, I'm just monitoring. No, thank you. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments submitted?
I've received, Chair Rooney, I've received 3 additional emails from the anonymous source. I can
Okay.
read them if it's that the pleasure of the commission or not.
Go ahead and read them.
Okay. The first one is, Dear Kai, they have admitted to spending money illegally from the CSD on roads, ? Has this been investigated? Then, dear Kai, the Bell Canyon Recreation programs never have any type of security. What Dennis Roy, the current CSD president, is saying is a lie. I live in Bell Canyon for 20 years and have attended numerous recreational activities, which were all done on very small investment of dollars. Also, there were not any recreational activities in 2020 or 2021. And this last one, Eric Wolf is being personally sued by the HOA insurance company for commingling his own legal fees with those of the Bell Canyon Association, HOA. The insurance company is suing him for $2.2 million. And those are the extent of the
Okay.
emails.
Okay, good. I'm going to open it up now to comments. I see Commissioner Parks. You're on mute, Commissioner.
As I recall, the county fire district, which we oversee, pays Los Angeles City to provide fire services. Mr. Loma, is that correct?
That is correct, and it is specific to Bell Canyon.
Okay, and so that continues. It's not like they won't be without fire service, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And then I think about the Fire Safe Council grants that the CSD has received, which, as your report states, it is not something they can receive because it's still latent power. So I think about other CSDs that would also like to be able to receive Fire Safe Council grants. Would the upshot of this be that they would have to return the Fire Safe Council grant?
I don't have an answer to that. That's up to the CSD to determine how they're going to comply.
Okay, so that, I guess, and that might just be another entity's decision on whether the state believes they should receive it, or if they can work it so that they can receive that latent power. That's going to take some doing, but I think you probably should qualify for those funds before you take them. So that might be the upshot of that. Regarding, I was also part of the discussion about using the color of authority, the sheriff's department being concerned about impersonating essentially a law enforcement. So I know that they did agree and repainted the car, but you don't find that the current paint job, as it were, and seal is compliant. The CSD is not a state entity.
That's correct. The CSD is not a state agency, and advertising themselves as such and using the state seal is improper, if not unlawful. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, they are letting the homeowners association use the CSD's card that is properly labeled as a state vehicle to do traffic enforcement.
Thank you. And regarding the suggestion that they could recuse themselves so that they're not approving money from one committee they're on and taking it on from another committee they're on. Legally, that's okay that they just recuse themselves? It sounded like from reading the report that is an option.
That was mentioned as addressing the issue with the Brown Act, and that wouldn't have any effect on compliance with the Brown Act. As long as they're meeting in an area that's not available or accessible to the public at large, then they're not consistent with the Brown Act. I think that was meant to try to address the issue of the potential conflicts of interest between those serving on both boards. That was actually told to me that was the practice, that these individuals were recusing themselves, having to do with financial decisions that affected the HOA. But the record shows that that's not true, that these individuals have voted both to budget money to go to the HOA and have, in many instances, voted to give money to the HOA. And that's in the record, meeting minutes.
Okay, the question I'm wondering is that okay? Is it legal to do that?
I cannot weigh in on that. I don't know.
Okay, that's a question I have. Because I know sometimes, well, certainly this is going between a public and a private entity. Because sometimes we sit on boards where we might provide funding for another board. But this is different because it is going to a private entity, which I think gets back to not supervisor, Mayor De La Pena's question regarding the JPA. When you have a private entity and a public entity, it's a different situation. Also, the question I have, CHP, is it just, to me, the CHP, for those in the city may not know, are essentially the entity that does traffic control on the roads in the unincorporated county. It's not the sheriff's department. It falls to the CHP, though the sheriff's department can. So my understanding is the CHP is welcome to go, for example, into Lake Sherwood or into other areas that are gated, and if they are asked to. Do they actually have to contract because they're a private entity to have the CHP come in? Is that the requirement?
I don't know. I mean, if I imagine if the CHP is willing to come into the district and provide some patrol, I don't know what their authority would be because the roads are private. I mean, I would imagine there needs to be some type of an agreement. So I don't know, but in that instance, that wouldn't be the CSD providing the service.
They would not be providing this service. No, they would contract. And so I guess what they had indicated, they were contracting with CHP. I can understand their desire to continue to have some traffic control during the next 6 months. So that's something that I would support, would be to look at if possible and if we can work that out, that they have some ability to have the traffic control with the CHP. So it's one public agency contracting with another public agency, which as I understand, is something that may be able to occur. So that would be something that I would support, but I'm glad to see that the fire service will continue. It's the county fire district contracting with the city fire district.
Right, and my understanding
Thank you.
regarding the contract with the CHP is that the CHP was willing to enter into a contract, but they wanted the CHP wanted the CSD to assume all liability for anything that occurs as part of the CHP patrolling, and the CSD was not willing to enter into that agreement, so the contract ended in 2013.
And so prior to that, over the last 30 years before that, I guess it was the CHP doing that. Okay, well, thank you for that. Appreciate the comments. And also, Mr. Wolf, I don't even know what letter you're talking about, and I certainly didn't direct any letters. So I just wanted to let you know so you may not believe me. All right, thank you.
Okay, this is the time for commissioner comments. The public comments have ended, sir. I'm going to go to Commissioner Ramirez.
I have a question for our council about the request suggestion that we could give provisional approval to do things not allowed under the law, or the allegation that they're not allowed under the law for the report we've given. Mr. Boada, can you speak about that? Because Ms. Lee requested that the organization be allowed to continue pending resolution I really support a continuance to allow this to get worked out. But in the interim, is there a way to do that?
There is, and the manner in which that would be done would be that by simply not adopting recommendation B, which is the adoption of the provisional sphere of influence. So that certainly is an option that your commission could pursue here.
So that would allow them to continue doing these things that have been noted as not authorized pending resolution?
Well, in terms of action by this commission, it would not prohibit that, but
Wouldn't make them
the
legal, you're
but
saying?
it would not. It would just be that your commission would not be taking action on that. But the situation would remain that those services are not currently being provided or are not currently being provided in accordance with applicable law. So that would not change regardless of any decision today by your commission.
And just going back to the public records issue that was raised by one of the speakers about, and Mr. Loma started out by saying that these were, we don't have a policy to, this organization doesn't have a policy to reject matters that come to the hearing or this was a public record and he requested that it be removed or never have been accepted. Could you comment on that?
Yes, as a general matter, this commission, as I would expect is true of all public agencies, does not have a practice or policy of excluding public comments based on the content. And there's a strong policy under the law that public bodies be provided full input from members of the public with respect to matters that are within the jurisdiction of those public bodies. And that is one of the reasons for the absolute privilege under the law that I noted in response to your earlier question. So it's a policy favoring full public access, full public communication, and disfavoring the exclusion of information in proceedings in front of public bodies such as this.
So we don't have an ability to censor what the public sends to us?
Well, certainly it's within the discretion of your commission to decide what will be part of a record of any of your proceedings. So that option is available. The communication would still remain a public record, meaning that if somebody requested it, it would have to be made available to them. It would just not be part of the record of this proceeding.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Commissioner Freeman, who's still on mute.
I have a clarification when regarding the Brown Act. I'm not clear. Are you saying that the CSDA board is required to put public notice for those outside their community? Is that what you were saying?
The public notice has to be available for the public, has to be posted in an area that's available, accessible to the public at large for 72 hours in advance of the meeting.
So you're defining the public at large outside of their community. The public at large to me is the people that are directly affected by the actions, which would be the community. And if it's posted in the community, that is their public at large.
The Brown Act requires it to be accessible to public, to people, the public outside of the agency boundaries.
If they did that on their website, would that constitute public?
That's part of it. If they have a website, it is required to be posted there as well as a physical place, either a bulletin board where the hearing notices are typically published or in and around the location of the meetings.
So I assume that they have a website, and if they publish it there, they would, in resolving this issue, they could just post it, say, at the entrance to their community. Is that correct?
As far as the posting, that would probably suffice. If it becomes a recurring location, that is the official place where they post such bulletins. However, it doesn't address the issue of the meetings.
I think I would assume that should the CSDA board have a request for a public comment outside of their community, they'd be willing to open and allow that person or persons to attend.
The meeting has to be open and accessible to anybody who wants to attend, whether they have said that
That's
they
what I'm
plan to.
saying.
Yeah, whether they have said
someone
they
wants
plan
to-
to or not, right.
If someone wants to attend and they're outside the community and they can notify the CSDA board, the board can make it accessible to them at the gate, and all those people can come in. So they're not being denied access. Correct?
Well, no, that's not altogether accurate. Anybody on a whim must have access to attend the board meetings. They do not, or they cannot be required to notify ahead and inform them that they're going to show up so they can be allowed through the gate. It is that they have to be
Okay, so
open
if-
and accessible.
So if it's posted on their web and posted at the gate and someone comes to the gate and wants to attend the meeting, then they would be allowed in to attend the meeting, even if they didn't give advance notice.
Right, if they were free to attend the meeting.
That would be
under-
satisfactory. That would be satisfactory then. If they just showed up at the gate and wanted to attend the CSDA board meeting, they would be allowed in, and so that would constitute access to the public.
Yeah, perhaps.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Zaragoza?
Madam Chair, regarding the posting of an agenda, I've been in meetings, say in Sacramento and in DC, where I want to participate in a meeting, whether it's a city council meeting or board of supervisors. You still have to post it if you're staying at the hotel or whatever agency you're staying at. So that gives the public the opportunity to participate. So what's the difference here between if there's a gate or no gate? So I believe that the people still have the right to participate regardless. Is that correct?
To the physical meetings, as far as participation in the physical meetings of the board? I
Right,
guess-
because they don't physically, they don't have to be there, but they can participate. If you're, for example, if I'm in Sacramento or DC and we post it
Mhm.
and somebody speak there, that's accepted, correct?
Right, and I believe you're talking about when the majority of the board is meeting personally, in person, and there is one person who might be at a conference who wants to attend. In that case, there are exceptions that will allow that board member to attend the meeting remotely. But that remote participant also has to make his location accessible to the public and post, that the meeting is happening then. I don't know how that would be for a member of the public to be required to Zoom in as opposed to being allowed free access to the meeting where the board is actually physically located.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Freeman?
You are
You're
muted.
still on mute.
Sorry. Under the current code until September 30, when we're under the emergency, all participants, board and public, can participate on Zoom. Unless it's extended, after the emergency is over on September 30, the board all board members have to be in public, but the public can still participate at the discretion of the board, either on Zoom or by telephone or in public. So there's still access after September 30.
Okay. Seeing now their hands up, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Mr. Lama, what obligation does the LAFCO Commission have when we believe that there are known violations on a number of fronts? What obligation do we have as far as notifying anybody or any agency?
Well, I think your obligation is to accept the MSR. And, the MSR outlines what these violations are. So you're taking an official action to recognize that there are management deficiencies and violations going on. And then it really becomes more discretionary. You can take certain actions that will encourage the district, put them on notice that these violations, these management deficiencies need to be rectified. They must be rectified, or the commission has the option to take further action. And that's the course of action that our recommendations are, that the MSR be accepted, that they be given a provisional sphere of influence, and then provided that 6 months to address these issues. And perhaps they can be addressed like the Brown Act issue. They can return to the commission and explain how they're going to address or have addressed the issue. At that point, the commission can remove the provisional sphere of influence and allow them to continue and come back to LAFCO to exercise additional powers if they want to in the future. So there's a mechanism built into these recommendations that do allow for the CSD to respond to everything in the MSR to the commission's satisfaction. But by adopting these recommendations, the commission is taking this very seriously and conveying to the commission, or to the CSD, that is taking these issues very seriously and wants them to be rectified.
Okay, so here's my feeling about this. Number one, I feel like the letter from Dr. Zeman, contains a lot of inflammatory language that I think is of a personal nature and not necessarily relevant to the LAFCO decisions or deliberations about that. And I agree with Mr. Wolf that there is an opportunity for us to shield some of the personal information, and that I believe that the LAFCO Commission should redact some of the unnecessary items and hide the names and refer to them as positions or something like that to provide some of the information that's not relevant to our deliberation here today. That's be my first recommendation. The second is that there's been a lot of allegations this morning for some improprieties, and I believe that out of an abundance of caution, that if staff could go back and meet together with the CSD to talk through some of these and come to some sort of agreement, because it's a he said, she said at this point here on some of these items where there appears to be deficiencies. And what I would like to see is for our staff to go back, now that the CSD has the MSR, they have what is indeed the allegations there, and to see if there's some way to work through those items and then come back in another period of time, whether it's 1 month or 2 months, come back to the commission and say, we've had this meeting with the CSD and LAFCO, we've worked through these items. If there's a consensus that some things are resolved and they're not accurate, then that would be removed from the MSR. If they are indeed accurate and it's just a disagreement, then it comes back to the LAFCO Commission again. But allow that opportunity for discussion between LAFCO and the CSD to talk through some of those things, because I hear just direct opposites from the public comments that we've heard today, which gives me pause before I make any decisions. So that would be my recommendation, is to not accept the current staff's recommendation, but yet go back and give it time for a breath and to work through some of the items here. So I see hands up from Commissioner Freeman and Commissioner De La Pena.
I just want to agree with what you're saying, Chair Rooney, but the problem I have is that there's such a schism between what is in the staff report and what is observed by the CSD. that those issues need to be resolved before I could make any kind of vote to accept, the report, and wait at least 6 months, give them time to work it out. Thank you.
Commissioner De La Pena, and then Commissioner Richards.
My question would be to staff, and that is, in order to go through all of these issues, allegations, accusations, whatever you call them, does LAFCO need to hire outside consultant, a forensic auditor, or anything like that in order to iron all of these wrinkles out?
No, not at all. This will be a pretty straightforward, actually, if you want to. I mean, I can address many of these claims now, but I understand that that's going to take a lot of time. No, I think between your legal counsel and I, we can work through all of these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Richards?
Yes, I'm curious as to the thinking of how much time would be required to work through all these issues. This is somewhat of a complicated process. It's not simple. And I think there should be some identification of what kind of time. I think Commissioner Freeman identified 6 months. That may be a long time period. We are entering into the holiday season in November or December. I would encourage the commission to at least consider about a 2-month continuance at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Thank you, Commissioner Supervisor Ramirez.
And then I know Janice has a question. Hannah, how about an update in 2 months, then a reconsideration of how much more time it would take, as opposed to just full stop in 2 months?
Thank you. Commissioner Parvin?
Well, I was just curious if we really could accomplish all this in 6 months with holiday season. It is really complex, and there isn't any other CSD in the county that looks quite like this. It's almost an island, but it's not. So, I'm wondering if we just, if we just moved forward with C and D for now, right? And that's my comments.
Okay.
But I also
would you like
don't want to move
Excuse me?
forward. I also would rather that, we now know there are areas where there's Brown Act issues and other, money moving from one group to another. And we're fully aware of that. So knowing that we have to actually put our foot down and say that can't be occurring during this time while we're processing solutions to these problems that we have, right? So some kind of commitment that they don't have those types of, their meetings are very public, all of these things are occurring during the 6-month period.
I don't think we have enforcement privileges on that, but Commissioner De La Pena, Bill De La Pena.
Thank you. In following Commissioner Parvin's recommendation or suggestion, if the commission does not adopt item A or recommendation A, and only and not B either, and only C and D, does that mean that the commission, do not acknowledge some of the findings? And will that invalidate everything that staff did if we don't adopt that?
Mr. Loma?
It wouldn't invalidate the findings. I mean, you would be continuing consideration of the MSR to another time. No, you do not need to make those determinations and findings at this point if you wish to continue this matter. I would recommend, if you want to continue it, then just continue the entirety of the matter. Do not adopt D, which is the outcome of D, what our options are to be presented to the commission at a later date, are going to be dependent on the final results of the MSR. So if we work through the issues that are asserted by the district and the MSR changes, then so too might the options that would be presented in under D. So if the commission does want to continue this matter, I would just recommend you continue the entire matter, and we'll bring it back at another time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make a motion that we continue the item for 6 months to allow the opportunity for LAFCO staff and the Bell Canyon Community Services District to address and resolve the issues identified in the draft MSR. And the second recommendation is to redact unnecessary portions of the letter from Dr. Zeman to remove any identifying features that would be unnecessary to this proceeding. So that's my motion.
I will second that.
Thank you. Any further comments?
And if I may, just, the redaction would be only to the letters as they are attached to the staff report. I don't think that we have the legal
I mean,
ability to redact
you've
it as part of the
posted-
public
you-
record.
Right, you've posted the letter on our agenda, so I mean, it's already there. But I think that there are things in there that are unnecessary and defamatory. I agree on that. So I would like to see specific names be removed and items in there just redacted, and call them, just identify them as something else.
Okay, and you're
Okay,
giving me the discretion, the discretion to determine what should be redacted.
I would. I mean, if you'd
Okay.
like to bounce it off the chair and vice chair, I think that would be appropriate. Vice
Okay.
Chair Ramirez, do you agree with that? I can hear you. Yes, okay. Commissioner Bill De La Pena.
I was just going to say, I think you already mentioned it, Mr. Loma, the record is already out there, and any document that is sent to a public agency automatically is a public document, no matter what it says, unless it is protected under attorney-client privilege. So the cat is out of the bag. Certainly, you can go back and redact, but unfortunately, the information is already out there.
That's
I
true.
agree. I agree. Okay, any other, Supervisor, Commissioner Parks.
Thank you. And just to be clear, you're making a recommendation which Mr. Loma just stated. Let's just continue the whole thing, not take parts of it and continue. Is that right? We're doing what he just suggested.
Continuing the whole thing.
Right. Okay, I support that. It has definitely put the Bell Canyon CSD on notice. So what it is that they are authorized to do and are not authorized to do, I hope that they will embrace that and do what they can to correct it, so we can have less issues when it comes back to us. Thank you.
I agree. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Zaragoza?
Madam Chair, my apologies. I'm going to have to leave the meeting.
Okay.
Very interesting meeting, and it's probably the longest LAFCO meeting I've been attending in a long time. But my apologies.
Okay, so let's take a vote before you go, unless there's any further comments. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes. Okay, well, we'll see this back in 6 months and look forward to a good conversation between the two agencies. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zaragoza, we will see you later.
Thank you.
And any other commissioners leaving the meeting at this point? Okay, thank you. We still have a quorum. All right, moving on to action items. We have number 11, the audited financial statement for fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. Mr. Loma?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One moment as we... Okay, so this is the audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th of 2020. This is a receive and file of the attached auditor's annual financial report for that fiscal year. And Connolly with Eide Bailey, who is a representative of the firm that prepared the audit, is here just to give an overview of the audit process and answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Good morning, and thank you everyone for having me participate in this meeting. My name is Kanali Sukasum, and I'm a partner with Ike Bailey. We've completed our audit of the Ventura Local Agency Formation Commission for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, and I wanted to take some time to discuss what our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards were, and also the results of the audit. Our scope of work was to provide an opinion on the Commission's financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. And we've issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the Commission's financial statements, the highest level of assurance over the financial statements. As part of our financial statement audit, we also considered the Commission's internal controls and design our audit procedures to gain reasonable but not absolute assurance over the financial statements. We also performed tests of compliance with regulations and contracts, those which could have a direct and material effect on the determination of the financial statement amounts. In addition, we reviewed the required supplementary information to ensure that the amounts contained within those sections are consistent with the information presented in the basic financial statements. The significant accounting policies used by the Commission are disclosed in Note 1 to the financial statements. There were no significant changes in accounting policies used. There was one new accounting pronouncement that was adopted in fiscal year 2020, and that was Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 95, which basically delayed the effective dates of pronouncements that were not yet effective due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements found during the audit. Further, I am happy to report that there were no difficulties or disagreements with amendments during the course of the audit. There were no consultations that were used by outside accounting firms. An example of this would be if the Commission entered into any unique financial transactions in which we didn't have the expertise in-house to test those types of transactions and had to consult with an outside firm, we would have to report those items out to you. And lastly, I just wanted to note that we really appreciate the opportunity of serving as the Commission's external auditors and would like to thank Commission management and staff for their cooperation with the audit process. And with that, that concludes my my overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Okay, any questions for our auditor? Seeing none, this is a receive and file. So, okay, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you.
Item number 12, update on LAFCO legislation. Mr. Loma. Oh, sorry, Mr. Richard, did you have a question? Sorry.
I had a quick question to Kai. On with regards to the revenue from filing fees, they continue to go down. Is it expected that they will continue to decrease, or is there something on the horizon that will change that number?
There's no expectation. Year to year, we do not know how many applications we're going to get in, and more importantly, the complexity of those applications. The more complex an application, the more staff time's devoted to it, and of course, then the more revenue. So, straight answer is we can't tell. We don't know.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Parks?
Just wondering, when we have receive and files, it's a vote. Do you need a vote on this? By we, I mean the Board of Supervisors, we vote on our receive and files.
Yes.
Do we need a vote on this?
Yeah, council is indicating that a vote should occur.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Thank you.
I'll need a motion in a second, please.
Okay, who wants to move this?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Bill de la Pena,
Yes?
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner Parks. Do you still have a question, or is your hand still up? Okay, thank you. All right, number 12, update on LAFCO legislation. Mr. Loma?
This item is just informational. It is a receive and file, just a legislative update. I do not believe there needs to be a roll call on this one. You're on mute. You're on mute, Chair Rooney.
Sorry, it is under an action item, so it is receive and file. We need to vote on this.
Okay, yeah, technically, we're being informed that you do.
Thank you. Roll call, motion, please.
We'll need a motion in a second.
3.
Can I just comment?
Oh,
Sorry. I was surprised that SB 9 was not listed, since SB 9 is on the governor's desk and has significant implications in land use. I know that League of California Cities and CSAC took opposition. Just for your information, commissioners, it would allow every single family lot to build a second home and get a lot split. No minimum lot size. And then each one of those single family homes could get an ADU. So where you had one home, you could have 4. And I was just, seems to be a lot of push for it, but I was surprised not to see it on the CalAFCO list.
Yeah, it was more of a land use and planning issue, and whatever LAFCO issues, I guess CalAFCO determined that it doesn't directly affect LAFCOs. I mean, it indirectly affects them, but not to the extent where we would be taking a position on it potentially.
Yeah, it just seemed to me that on a level of service where you go from 1 to 3, that there was an impact, but thank you.
You're welcome.
right. So did we have a motion, Ms. Beltran?
We do not.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Freeman, is there a second?
Neglect a second.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richards, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes?
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes. Thank you. Item number 13, we received a correspondence from Mr. Moss. Mr. Loma, do you have any comments?
No comments, just informational.
Okay. Any commissioners have a question about that? Okay, seeing none, move to the executive officer's report. Number 14, Mr. Loma, please.
Sure. The report on anticipated future agenda items is part of this item. It's self-explanatory. I would like to add that the October CalAFCO conference that was scheduled to be held in Orange County has been canceled. So CalAFCO is looking into holding some of the sessions potentially virtually. As far as we know now, the annual business meeting, which includes the election of CalAFCO board members and the awards for CalAFCO projects, et cetera, will be held as scheduled, but they will be virtual. So that's the latest we have. At this time, Commissioner Ramirez is the voting delegate for the commission, and I am the alternate voting delegate for the commission for the election. And that was done because at the time, we were the only 2 individuals who were going to be attending the conference in person. So that will carry over to the virtual meeting. As I mentioned in my last update memo, my annual performance evaluation was mailed, I believe, yesterday or today. There'll be a closed session item at the October meeting to discuss that. And the next meeting will be on October 20th. So that's all.
So that will be a public meeting?
We don't know at this point. We had actually anticipated a while ago that this was going to be an in-person public meeting. However, given circumstances, it was switched to Zoom. So we are just kind of playing it day by day.
Okay, thank you. That's a receive and file. Can we have a motion, please?
Could I ask a question?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Okay, perhaps at our next meeting, I would be interested to know about a little more about the farm worker housing project in Somas that I think during the hearing, they mentioned that it couldn't connect to the city's sewer system because of SOAR, and I'm just wondering if that's the case, and then I've heard different now too. Yes, can you answer that right now, or?
I can tell you what I know. Is that okay to?
It's not currently on
Yeah,
the
that's-
agenda. Can we
Yeah,
talk
that,
about
that
it?
could be for a discussion at a future meeting.
Okay, at a future meeting. At this point, I know of no LAFCO issues associated with that project.
Okay, that's
you.
informative. Thank you.
Is there a motion to receive the executive officer's report?
Move.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Chair Rooney.
Yes. Okay, at this point, we have commissioner comments. Any commissioner would like to make any comment? Okay, seeing none, we will see you all in October, hopefully in person, if not.
All right,
on
thank
Zoom.
you.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Take care.
again.